Greetings, I'm Hayes Fierro, editor of Information Warfare magazine. Today, I'd like to break down and unpack this video to better understand its content and context.
That's very good. It also means that the congressmen are not, I believe it's a mistake. It's a bad mistake.
И меня не убедят заявления, декларации самого такого респектабельного характера относительно того, что России нечего беспокоить.
And I'm not persuaded by the assurances that we hear that Russia has nothing to worry about. That was abruptly suspended or terminated in 1990.
Нельзя унижать народ, нацию, и нельзя рассчитывать, что это так пройдет все.
You may not humiliate a nation, a people, and think that it'll have no consequences.
Ну и другое, это что уже, новая стратегия?
So my question is this a new strategy?
Говорят, нет. И оборвались в конце 91-го года.
I think it is
Вот если это будет продолжаться так, тогда все, о чем мы говорили, перечисляли, целый перечень проблем, их трудно будет решить.
I feel that if
Тогда начнем разыгрывать карты друг против друга.
I feel that if the same kind of games continue to be played, if one country plays some card against the other country, then all of those problems, all of those issues that we've been mentioning today will be very difficult to resolve. Glasnost, free elections, political pluralism, the problems of concern to you. If not, it'll be more difficult. Thank you.
We revisit one of the most pivotal transitions in modern geopolitics: how the United States, after emerging victorious in Cold War I, inadvertently set the stage for Cold War II. Through strategic missteps, unfulfilled assurances, and a lack of balance in its policies, the US ignited a renewed rivalry with global implications. In this analysis, we dive into the not 1 inch eastward assurance, NATO's expansion, and the calculated moves that defined the post-Cold War era. This journey will unravel how actions intended to secure peace instead fanned the flames of division, positioning the US on the brink of losing its dominance. Let's begin this thought-provoking journey into history, strategy, and the lessons we must learn to navigate a fragile global order. From victory to vulnerability, how the US won Cold War I, but ignited Cold War II. The United States emerged triumphant from Cold War I, with the Soviet Union collapsing under economic strain and internal dissent. This marked the end of a decades-long ideological and geopolitical struggle. It seemingly ushered in an era of unipolar dominance for the US. However, rather than consolidating this victory through diplomacy and stability, a series of strategic missteps and broken promises reignited tensions. Today, Cold War II is not only a reality, but one the US risks losing. The not 1 inch eastward promise and its aftermath. As the Cold War was winding down, US Secretary of State James Baker, alongside other Western officials, reportedly assured Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev that NATO would not expand 1 inch eastward beyond Germany. These assurances were critical to securing Soviet agreement to German reunification and the withdrawal of Soviet forces from Eastern Europe. However, no formal treaty codified this promise. While Gorbachev later acknowledged its informal nature, the perception of betrayal became entrenched in Russian political discourse. NATO expansion, a breach of understanding. In the 1990s, NATO began incorporating former Eastern Bloc countries like Poland, Hungary, and the Czech Republic. For these nations, NATO membership was a guarantee of security against potential Russian aggression. In 2004, the inclusion of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, former Soviet republics, was a particularly provocative move from Moscow's perspective. At the 2008 NATO Bucharest summit, the declaration that Ukraine and Georgia would eventually join the alliance was seen as crossing a red line for Russia. This further intensified animosity. By expanding NATO eastward, the West arguably overplayed its hand, prioritizing immediate gains over long-term stability. The strategic missteps of a unipolar moment. In 1992, the Defense Planning Guidance, often referred to as the Wolfowitz Doctrine, articulated a strategy for the US to maintain global dominance by preventing the rise of any rival power. This approach reflected a triumphalist mindset that overlooked the need for balance in global affairs. The US expended significant resources on interventions in the Middle East, including the 2003 Iraq invasion, based on false claims of weapons of mass destruction. It also engaged in regime change efforts in Libya and Syria, destabilizing the region and fostering anti-American sentiment. These actions diverted attention and resources away from addressing Russia's resurgence and rising tensions in Eastern Europe. Russia's resentment and resurgence. From Moscow's perspective, NATO's expansion, US missile defense systems in Europe, and Western support for color revolutions in post-Soviet states constituted an existential threat. Ukraine, a key transit country for Russian natural gas to Europe, became a focal point of economic and geopolitical contention.
A big part of the problem was Russia for many, many years, long before Putin said you could never have NATO involved with Ukraine. Now, they've said that. That's been, written in stone. And somewhere along the line, Biden said, no, they should be able to join NATO. Well, then Russia has somebody right on their doorstep, and I could understand their feeling about that. But there were a lot of mistakes made in that negotiation. And when I heard the way that Biden was negotiating, I said, you're going to end up in a war. And it turned out to be a very bad war. And it could escalate. That war could escalate to be much worse than it is right now.
They can never join NATO.
Well, my view is that it was always understood. In fact, I believe that they had a deal, and then Biden broke it. They had a deal which would have been a satisfactory deal to Ukraine and every.
EU-backed efforts to reduce dependence on Russian energy added to Moscow's sense of encirclement. In 2014, Russia annexed Crimea and became involved in eastern Ukraine. These actions reflected a calculated response to what Moscow perceived as Western overreach, how the US ignited Cold War II. The West's focus on the Middle East and its dismissive approach to Russia allowed Moscow and Putin to rebuild their cyber, military, and economic clout. This laid the groundwork for a new era of geopolitical conflict. This resurgence was not limited to traditional power structures. Russia also ignited a sophisticated information war that weaponized digital technology, propaganda, and cyber attacks to challenge the West on a global scale. Russia's information war extended into super PACs, provided anonymously thanks to Citizens United, and was evident when Republican anti-Trumpers magically became MAGA. Through state-sponsored entities like the Internet Research Agency and platforms such as RT and Sputnik, Russia deployed disinformation campaigns aimed at undermining democratic institutions, influencing elections, and sowing discord within Western societies. Simultaneously, Russia's cyber capabilities expanded significantly, targeting critical infrastructure, government networks, and private industries in the US and Europe. Militarily, Russia modernized its forces, focusing on hybrid warfare strategies that combined conventional military strength with asymmetric tactics. Economically, Putin leveraged energy resources as a geopolitical weapon. This multifaceted strategy caught the US unprepared as years of focusing on Middle Eastern conflicts diverted attention and resources away from addressing Russia's resurgence. The United States, on the verge of losing Cold War II. NATO's internal divisions over defense spending and strategic priorities weaken its effectiveness. Trump's public criticisms of NATO members for failing to meet defense commitments amplified these divisions. Moreover, Trump's inconsistent foreign policy raised questions about the US's commitment to global leadership. This erosion of trust created openings for Russia to exploit through information warfare and ideological influence. This erosion of trust among allies weakened long-standing alliances and commitments, creating openings for Russia to exploit. Whether intentional or accidental, Trump's approach to foreign policy and NATO during his administration coincided with a critical moment in history, leaving the West vulnerable to Russia's aggressive strategies in the realms of information warfare and ideological influence. By framing NATO as ineffective and questioning its relevance, Trump inadvertently aligned with one of Russia's key strategic goals, undermining Western unity. This timing, coupled with a lack of coherent strategy to counter Russia's resurgence, has left the West exposed in a war of information and ideals. As NATO's cohesion faltered, Russia capitalized on the opportunity to expand its influence, not just militarily, but also through the spread of disinformation and the destabilization of democratic institutions across the globe. Conclusion Cold War II was not inevitable. It was the result of strategic missteps, broken promises, and triumphalist policies that failed to prioritize stability. If the US continues on its current path, it risks losing the very global influence it sought to protect. By learning from its mistakes and embracing a balanced approach, the US has an opportunity to avert further escalation and chart a path towards sustainable peace.